Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode on the podcast. I am inspired and excited to share this episode with you because it is with an incredible human being that actually is one of my good friends and has been someone that I've been able to spend a lot of time with over the past 12 months, become really close best friends in that time and be able to change a lot of lives in that process. And this person that is joining me today in this conversation is none other than Steven Nikolovski, also better known as Stivka online and to all of us as mates and people in the community. I don't think anyone really calls him Steven anymore, but hey, Stivka, whatever works. So, Stivka is a breathwork educator, teacher, and facilitator. He is the founder of Cold and Conscious, which is a company and wellness community that I also am a facilitator for, that you'd see around the bays of Victoria. In this episode, we discuss the pivotal moment of, losing a few friends to suicide and how that became a moment where he wanted to really change his life and impact others in a powerful way. Making changes to create the person you want to be, having good role models in your life, building good habits, prioritizing the things you enjoy, how Cold and Conscious started and where it is today and where it's going, the benefits of cold therapy. You'll see us jumping in the ice all the time. Why do we do it? Why do we do the cold showers? What's the benefits of that? The importance of discomfort and fear, and why our breath is so important. And there's so many little nuggets of wisdom in there to help us in breathing more optimally in our life, and why it's so important to not only breathe better for our breath and our body, but also for our life and how it affects everything in our life. And there's also so much more. So make sure you are taking notes, you're listening and you're tuning in, because this guy is just an absolute legend, and he's doing some amazing work in the world that is really needed. And if you've been to any of his events or seen him at my events or been to Cold and Conscious, you will know the impact of this. So get ready for an incredible episode. But before we jump in, I do want to thank our sponsor for the podcast, Shine Drinks. It is our natural nootropic energy drink. It's our better energy, right? There's so many things that we look to for energy. For me, this is a brand that I was going to naturally for, at the supermarket. I'd see it and I'm like, oh, that's great packaging. And it's natural. Okay, sweet. I want to try this. And even what it says on here, Shine with natural nootropics, a new twist on old age ingredients to help energize and awaken your mind, helping you to think, feel, and do better in your daily life. I love this stuff. My favorite flavor is the blue lemonade, but look, try them all. There's so many different of drinks in the range as well. These are the Shine Yellow ones, so make sure you go check them out. You can go to supermarkets around you, service stations, they're available, or you can go to their website and get yourself a case of Shine. So make sure to go get one and enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Live, Feel, Be Inspired podcast. My name is Carlos Cirillo, and I am going to bring you inspirational tools, tips, wisdom, and stories from incredible people from around the world to help you live, feel, and be inspired in your daily life. So tune in, take notes, and let's get inspired.
Oh, we're still going.
Yeah. Just so we could get the sound coming through the mic. We don't have any omnidirectional mics going on here, but...
What kind of podcast is this? Boy.
Welcome. Well...
It's pretty sick. I'm pretty impressed. Look what we've done with this place.
And the guests watching, so if you're watching on YouTube or wherever you're streaming it from, actually you can be streaming it straight through Spotify now.
How cool is that?
So if you're checking it out, you'll be able to see the space. Welcome into another episode of the Live, Feel, Be Inspired podcast. I've got one of my best mates here and also legends, Steven Nikolovski. It's so weird calling you Steven, but it is your name.
That's my name. Yeah, that's my birth certificate.
We're not bound by it, but
most people don't call me Steven, funnily enough.
Well, that's like when I was designing the posters and stuff. I'm like, Steve Nikolovski? Stivka? Or Steve? Whatever.
Stivka. Yeah. Stivka, go with Stivka. It's
but even
that
Steve,
way.
like that's still...
I'll tell you why Stivka. You can call me Steve, but it's like everyone's called Steve.
Yeah.
And Nikolovski's got too many letters in it.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, though, it's a very, very common name.
Really?
In like Macedonia, it is very, very popular. It's like fucking Smith or something around here. And so Masso's living in Australia, Steve Nikolovski. There's a few just in Geelong here.
No
like I'm not
way.
the only one. Yeah. So Stivka, that's not actually a real name. Like it's not Macedonian. It just sounds Macedonian. My cousin came up with it. Yeah, Stivche.
Stivche.
But the idea behind it, my cousin came up with it and I rolled with it because I'm like, okay, that's a name unique enough. Kind of like Kanye or like Oprah or like someone where you don't need a last name to know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Kylie, Beyonce.
Yeah.
They don't need last names. You know who I mean.
100%. Stivka.
Add it to the list.
So if you've, connected on social media and all those things, you would have seen Stivka in my posts on Cold and Conscious and all of that. He is the founder of Cold and Conscious, Australia's favourite ice therapy, cold therapy community. And if you've seen my stuff, you'll see me facilitating Altona, but also the big man over here is the one that kind of started and sparked the inspiration for all of what's been growing around the bays of Melbourne, Geelong, and possibly further, who knows, moving forward. But also breathwork facilitator and all these incredible other things. But I think the other inspiring thing is just the friendship that we've got as well. And it's like an honor to have someone that's become one of my close mates for the past literally 12 months. Like I went to my first Cold and Conscious 12 months ago. We knew each other a little bit before then and worked together a little bit, but it was never like hanging out, catching up, going deep on things. So it's super exciting to be here with you now and recording another podcast, especially on the new podcast. So welcome, brother.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a hell of a 12 months. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here beside you.
If anyone's listened to the last podcast, so the Carlos Cirillo show with you, I remember we did it and you're like, yeah, I'm not happy with that one. Like I'm ready to go again. And then when we think about the growth that we've had, I think that was 6 months ago.
That was about 6 months ago. Yeah.
Totally different people in that time.
I was not in the mood, hey. I was not in the mood.
Are you in the mood today?
I'm pretty good today, yeah. I'm a little sleepy, like I'm not on my A game, but when are you always on your A game? Like I'll make it my A game.
Make it, yeah.
I'm in the mood. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be chatting, so that's about as good as it can get.
You know what? When it's time to bake the cake, you got to bake the cake.
100%, yeah.
So for those that don't know much about you or, your story, can you give us a wrap up of your story from where you started to where you are now and what made you take the steps that you have taken to create what you've created now?
Yeah. Whoa. So many different angles you can go with a question like that. Whoa. All right. So I guess things for me really started changing and heading in this direction where life has taken me now in about 2015, 2016. I remember sitting in a float tank, so a sensory deprivation tank. For those who don't know, that's just a tank of water filled with salt, so it feels like you're floating in it, and it's pitch black, so you can't see anything, and it's basically just like lying in nothingness is essentially what you're doing. So I was working 100-hour weeks sometimes. Like I was working an intense job that had me very stressed, but I was also partying on every side of it. And just lying in this float tank, it was something that gave me just a little bit of sanctuary from all of this stuff. And I was lying there one day and I'd had a bender a few days before and my lungs were just if anyone who has ever smoked cigarettes before will know, but when you're just like full of ash, and I'm lying there in this nothingness, and I just remember getting really in tune with my breath, thinking, this is like not how lungs are meant to work. And I got really curious about like what point does an inhale become an exhale, an exhale, an inhale. And it was just like, why am I controlling this? Why isn't it happening naturally? And I started panicking and freaking out. And I was just like, all right, I got to make some changes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that kind of like, that was a point for me where I really started looking after my health in many, many ways and got me to where I am today. But in a past life, I was partying a lot. I was, drinking a lot, smoking a lot, doing random drugs here and there, working a lot. Basically just burning the candle every which way you can go. When I was 20, I lost one of my friends to suicide, and it was the first of a few. Like, there was a few in that same year that happened. That was the first like death I'd ever experienced. But there was quite a few that started to happen, and it was all similar lifestyles. Like, everyone was kind of going down that. So for me, I kind of realized, like, it didn't happen overnight, but I realized, all right, if I want to end up somewhere worth being, then the current trajectory I am on is not going to take me there. Yeah. So piece by piece, I kind of just made some changes, and eventually, like, it took some time, but eventually a few kind of things just smacked me in the face, and I was like, all right, no, let's go fix this up. And so at that point, I kind of went all out. Like, I went from this crazy party lifestyle to nearly overnight. Like, all right, now I meditate. Now I'm in nature all the time. Now I do yoga. Now I exercise. Now I eat good. Now I breathe. Now I do cold showers. Like, all this random stuff. I was just threw everything at it, and it was really remarkable this point in time, because like I did start to feel better, and like all these synchronicities started coming up, and I was meeting people and situations were happening. It was like, whoa, like, this is what happens when you start to grab life by the balls. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that was really when my journey kick-started off, I suppose. It's just been evolving ever since.
And it's interesting because, like, you said that it was an overnight thing, like, where you decided.
Pretty much, man. Like, it was like I said, like, when the timeline sort of like when I was 20, this suicide happened, and it did flick a bit of a switch, but it was a gradual switch, because me and my friendship group and everyone I was associating with were in the thick of it at that point. Like, we were all just absolute maniacs. So it wasn't something that I got out of straight away then, but slowly, like, I got out of Geelong at that point. Like, you know what I mean? I left the environment I was in, not straight away after a couple of years, but I did. And then I moved to Melbourne, but then that was good. But then I started getting caught up into, like, I was making all this good money, and I was in hospitality, and like quite high up in hospitality too. So it was a different lifestyle, and things just changed. They didn't get better. But then, like, my health wasn't where I wanted it to be at all. Like, I just didn't feel good a lot of the time. There definitely, on the outside, there was a lot of successful looking things, but on the inside, it was still, there was a yearning, there was a numbness and a hopelessness there. Not everybody saw it or recognized it. Like, I was very good at hiding that, but it was there. And yeah, there were a few little instances that just kind of made me think, all right, this is too much. There was one in particular. I don't know if we'll talk about it here, but we'll, there was one instance where I was just like, yeah, my health failed me. And I was like, it's because I'm so stressed out. At that point I was like, all right, I'm done. I was quite into, like, podcasts at the time. And everyone who I was listening to, they were all men, but they were all men that I hadn't really had many examples of before in my life. And what made them different from many people that I knew or had seen was that they were very successful, strong, like, manly dudes. But they were also very, they were open and expressive, and they had the other side of it as well. So they were very balanced. And all of these guys had, the common denominator was that they were all looking after their health. And that's something that I wasn't doing. So it was in my field. Like, I knew at some point, all right, I got to look after myself and sort my health out. And it was some of these events where I was just like, all right, you're done. At that point, it was like, go. So I went.
Yeah. Make that decision.
Yeah.
Who were some of those podcasts that you were listening to?
Joe Rogan was the main one at the time. Yeah. And this is before he was as well known as he is now as well. And so I know it triggers a lot of people, but, like, he was, like, through my 20s, that dude fucking saved me. Like, yeah, the people that he'd talk to and the conversations that they'd have, and they were talking about things that a lot of things that just questioned life and reality and the systems and the way things work and why we do what we do and why we behave the way we do. There were things that I'd be having, like, at at that point of the night where it's like you're done partying and you're chilling out and you're having D&Ms looking at the stars, like they're having those kind of conversations, but this is a grown-ass man. Like he's an adult and he's obviously successful. So it was like, for me, it kind of was like, okay, I'm allowed to ask these kind of questions. I don't have to follow the traditional path of this and that. And it doesn't have to be something that goes away. Yeah. But yeah, like he was there. Aubrey Marcus ended up coming in a couple of years later. It was a really big one. They were probably the main two in the early days. Yeah. And just all the guests they had on, listen to a lot of Jocko, like the typical kind of crew. If you're into one of them, you're into all of them. Yeah. But yeah, I guess as they were all coming up, I was very into it all. When I moved from Geelong to Melbourne, like I was surrounded by a lot of people all the time. Like I was in leadership positions. So there was always people working with me, working for me, etc. But a lot of my friends I left in Geelong. And so there was a few tight friends that like I was living with and then made the move with me. They were there, a handful of them, which I love them to bits. But in general, I did spend a lot of time myself because there wasn't anyone that was like close to. And so I guess that's kind of, yeah, that became my crew. A lot of the people that I was listening to and the books that I was reading. Yeah.
And it does happen. And it's like, I didn't know that it was those two in particular because that was pretty much a lot of my 20s. Like, and who I started listening to from a young age. And like, it was Aubrey first and then it was Joe Rogan. And it just opened my perspective so much. And it was, I loved personal development at the time. So, or even still now. And all of those things were really like, these are processes, these are tools, these are, sales or whatever it is. But when I listened to Aubrey, when I listened to Joe, I was like, yeah, I see they are men doing manly shit, but also opening up and so self-aware to be able to do that's what I really connected with. And I didn't have that in my inner circle. So it was nice to connect, well, actually like disconnect, but connect at the same time to people and have those examples in my life. Do you think that they played a good example of being like role models in your life to like what you could step into as a male?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Which is a beautiful thing about the internet, I guess. Like you can have role models that you've never met before from the other side of the world. Like, yeah, it was phenomenal. I mean, I had role models in real life as well. Don't get me wrong. I've had some incredible people in my actual life. In terms of that though, like, I don't know, that they just hit spots in me that other people weren't. Maybe part of it is because they are like these people from somewhere else that I've never, like there's a little bit of idealizing who they actually are. And like we all I guess project ideals on people as human beings. Perhaps there's some of that as well. But either way, it still strikes something that's true within me. And with like these examples of Joe and Aubrey, like something that's true in many, many, many men around the world. Like it's striking something that we really resonate with. So whatever that is, whether it's an ideal or whether it's who they actually are, that's something special that we need to take seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was good to have those examples and people that you could listen to and tune into. Then what sparked the inspiration for Cold and Conscious?
Wow. Let's get into that story. So when I did start looking after myself, my idea was if I want to look after my health, it's not good enough just to like get into it for a little bit and whatever. I need to change my habits so that this is actually a lifestyle thing because it's my habits that have gotten me to where I am right now. If I want to change the habits, the best way to change your habits is to spend time around the best of the best. Simple as that. It's like I can try and do it by myself, but if I'm just surrounded by the best, then I'll become the best. And so for me, the next few years of my life was dedicated entirely to putting my health first. And it was really cool how it actually came to be, actually. I'd left my job. I tried a couple other things. I ended up in a point where I just wasn't working for a few months. And I just wanted to like, I left Geelong to go to Melbourne to try and find something else, but this wasn't it. So what is that? That whole purpose crisis. And I was literally just spending time just doing those things, going to nature, doing yoga, whatever it might have been. I decided that, all right, I need to start doing something with my time, but I don't know what to do. So what I am going to do is put the things that I know for sure that I'm enjoying first. I might not know exactly what I want to be doing or what I like, but I do know that I do enjoy doing this and all these exercises and practices. So I made a timetable where that was the center of my day. And I just figured that if I can do that, then everything is naturally going to evolve around that. Has to. Or I'll make it happen. Like, that's where we start. So I started doing that. And
what were some of those things?
Yoga, breath work, going out into nature, exercising, journaling, taking some mushies, things like that.
Beautiful.
Just, it was very health and mind and body and soul related practices. Yeah.
You're not talking about the mushrooms we buy at the supermarket. It's
I mean, there was a couple of those. Yeah. No, definitely a bit more special than that. Yeah. It was all, for me, like, it was, I've always been intrigued by the power of the mind, and I've always thought a little bit differently to people and circles that I grew up with. Always been a little bit outside of the box. But the transformation for me was a body transformation. Like, that's where it really got curious, because I was never fit growing up or healthy. Like, I used to get teased because of how stupid I looked when I ran when I was younger. Like, it wasn't my thing. I wasn't a fan. I'd skip PE classes. Fuck that. Go do something else. But yeah, so like, when I started looking after my body, that's when I really started like understanding what they mean when they say your body is a temple. Like, it truly is a place of worship once you start to connect with your inner world on a physical sense. And that's what changed everything for me. So those practices were what I was doing. And within a week of doing this and putting my intention as that being the center of my world, I ended up getting an interview with a place called Fifth Element Wellness, which was and still is a holistic health based gym. Now, it's changed a lot since I was going there. It's very, but when basically what this was, it was a situation where, like now, 2022, there's a lot of places and people where you can get this holistic approach, like where you are looking after your health, but you're also looking after your gut or your mind, or you're doing your breathing, whatever. When I was doing it, like, it wasn't as profound as it is right now. So all the random stuff I was doing was literally just random off intuition. And I'm sure places did exist that were bringing it together, but it wasn't as obvious. And so Fifth Element was a place it was a gym, but it was doing all of this stuff. Like, it was exercising and really looking after nutrition. And I noticed that the owner was a Wim Hof instructor, and like, we had ice baths there, and they'd worked with a doctor so you could take your bloods and base trim programs based on that. Like, it was the real deal. So I was like, this is what I'm doing. This is literally what I'm doing. And I wasn't going to apply it first, because I'm like, I've got so many triggers around gyms and those environments, because it was never my thing. So a lot of mirrors came up for me there. But the reason I did apply was because they were looking for an operations manager, and that happened to be my skill set, because that was the kind of stuff that I was doing previously. So here we have something that I didn't even know existed. Is actually, not only does it exist, but they're writing a role that is exactly within my skill set. So this was written for me, and off we go. That was the next chapter. So yeah, so out of just restarting life and putting what was important to me at the forefront, life did exactly that. It evolved around that. And so the next 3 years, I was just there with the intention of just spending time around the best of the best to improve my health. And that happened. I mean, yeah, I've come a long way in terms of my body and my health in every aspect. And I've still got a long way to go. Like, the journey's not over. But yeah, that was the next point. Anyway, you asked me about cold and conscious. So how this ties into all of that was that I was quite big into Wim Hof and all of his teachings even before I started here. How I got into that wasn't actually from Wim Hof. So I started breathing in the float tank because I just got so fascinated by it, like by my breath going in and out. And I was fascinated. So I was really paying attention to my breathing. Cold showers I was doing just because I was like, this is something easy that I can do. And I know it's meant to be good for you. So let's try it. And so I was starting to experiment with these things anyway. But that's when Wim Hof popped up on Tim Ferriss and on Joe Rogan. So he started to just boom, blow up very similar times when I got into it. And yeah, he became my hero for a while. So I was very much into that, and we'd do some Wim Hof stuff at Fifth Element every month or so. There was, a couple of guys there, Dave, Mark Kluwer, like they're Wim Hof guys, and Mark's still doing stuff. He's got an amazing retreat in Dalesford now that he's set up and built on property out there. Yeah, great. But I was always helping out and doing that stuff and very involved in it. So eventually what happened was that on my 30th birthday, lockdowns began in Melbourne for this thing called COVID. And I'd sort of been 29 and a half. My mind started flipping a little bit. I'd never really cared about age, but at 29 and a half, it just went boom, like, whoa. I started thinking, that's how fast a decade goes. Like, I think when you turn 20, you've been in your teens, like, you don't really recognize that it's been a decade, but when 20 to 30 comes, you start to realize that's how quick it actually goes. And for me, it's like, oh man, like, I never really had any career or anything that I didn't fit the norm. It didn't really make sense for me, anything. And so I've lived this life that is a little bit sideways to that. And every step of the way has felt exactly what I needed to do for myself. So despite everyone's comments, I've trucked on with it anyway. But now it's like, I'm turning 30 and I don't have fucking anything to show for it. I was like, I got nothing to my name. I got nothing, this, that. Started panicking a little bit. And I remember like lying in bed one time and I didn't go to work for like a week, and I was just lying there and I was just numb again. And I was like, for the first time ever, I was sitting there thinking, I understand why my friend killed himself now. Like, I never really understood it, but this time it was like my mind was in that similar place, and I was like, I see how he slipped. I see how he got there. So yeah, for me, it was like, man, the job's still not done. Like, I'm getting comfortable, but I still haven't done what I've set out to do. And after the first couple big lockdowns, I decided it was time to come home to Geelong. Part of me was sort of thinking like, you know what, if the world's ending right now and I'm not even in a position where I can look after myself, let alone anybody else. So why do my opinions actually matter right now? That was what I kind of conclusion I came to. And I thought, I'm never going to be in that position ever again. So coming back down to Geelong was always meant to happen. I never wanted to leave for as long as I did. I was gone for 7 years, but I came back and I just wanted to keep things up, really. Like, I mean, I always planned to come back to Geelong, and my hope was always one day that I'd be able to come back and maybe teach my friends, family, the people, the communities, bring something that wasn't there. Like, I mean, second biggest city in Victoria, but it's very small town mentality. At least it was. It's changed a lot now. A lot of new people in, but that if you're from there, it is very kind of small town mentality. So for me, it was like, I want to get out of the bubble and bring something new, because I didn't fit into the usual roles or occupations or anything like that. So when I came, I started swimming on the beach in the morning with my friend Stefan. We would be doing some breath work. We'd go for dips in the ocean and just like talk about life and stuff. And eventually I got a pool and I got some ice because I wanted to keep up these habits that I've built. It's like, this is really the test now. Now that I'm leaving this environment, how well did I pick up these habits? And so cold was the main one for me. Like, that's more than anything, that's just brings me right back to myself. We did that on the beach. After a while, I bought a pool and got the ice. After a couple of weeks of that, I invited some people because I figured if everybody pitches in for the ice, I get free ice baths. All right, let's go. And soon enough, the whole town started showing up, which was cool. Knowing in Melbourne, like, there was a lot going on all the time, lots of events, whether it was wellness, spirituality, in all of these circles. Like, I was quite deep in the scene in Melbourne in these circles. And so there was a lot going on. In G-Town, there might have been, but I didn't really know of anything. But I knew there was a lot of cool people around, just nothing really bringing everyone together. So I figured if we start doing this ice bath thing, it's going to pop. It's going to happen. And yeah, it did. People started coming. People started rallying around it. We started doing heaps of community events, and a lot of things really evolved out of it. A lot of people met, intertwined, did their own things. A lot of people now still doing really cool things. Like, I mean, it's evolved a lot. Like, the people who were originally coming are off doing their own things. They don't come as much as they used to, but like different cycles of people come through, and it's just, yeah, it's evolved into something that I never could have imagined.
Yeah. And that's so powerful to see it grow. And I've only been involved obviously for 12 months, but ever since going to it and feeling the effects that I felt at a time where I really needed it. I was lacking that community in my life. I was lacking that sort of like knowledge of where I was in life. I was a bit lost. I was like, where can I go to one, work on these things that I really enjoy too, but also feel that community feeling. And I remember reaching out and being like, I'm coming. It's an hour drive, but I'm coming. And I did. And I remember the first time I went there, like the experience of the breath work was, I've done breath work before, but it was never, I don't know, maybe I just never fully let myself be in it to have that sort of experience. And then ice baths I've been doing since I was like 12, but I'd always been up to the hip.
Footy players and soccer players.
First time in, I had my hands out, my arms out, and he's like, mate, you said to me, you're like, it's not a jacuzzi, like, you're supposed to get in. And I'm like, nah, I'm all right. This is cold enough. And then next week, I came back again and got in, and it was not only for me, like, you know, if you've been to one of the sessions, if you haven't, come check it out. But if you have, you know that feeling of being there for the first time and being like, oh, can I actually do that? Oh, everyone else can do it. But your mind starts to go, yeah, but can you do it? Do you want to do it? Why are you doing this? Like, why'd you wake up at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. on a Sunday or a Saturday to be here? And I think for me, even when it's in the shower, about to turn it to cold, it's like, you don't have to do this. And your mind will go, why are you doing it? This is going to be uncomfortable. But being able to turn off that voice and know the reason why you're doing it, whether it is for, you know, your own mental health or resilience or whatever, and health benefits as well, to actually turn that tap or to jump in the ice. And then there's the next level of it, which is actually sitting through it. Because even then, you can still jump out at any point. You can, because we do about, 3-minute rounds? Mm-hmm. You can, we don't even time anymore in Altona. So
I was never timing.
Yeah. You're just like, yeah, it's about time.
Time's an illusion.
Go for it. But even in then, it's like each time you do it, it brings another element to it. So my first experience was pretty profound, and then obviously it led me to kind of reach out to you and say, hey, I want to bring this close to Melbourne. You either train me or I'm going to start it and compete against you. And you were like, all right, I'll train you up. I don't think it was quite like that, but that's how I remember it.
Ultimatums.
Yeah, I was just like, hurry up and bring it. Like, you know, I'm here to help you. And then we did, and Altona's, you know, had such an amazing run since then. And you've popped up in, you know, Mornington for a little bit there, South Melbourne, Ocean Grove soon. For you, what inspired you to actually like bring this to the community though? Like, you could easily have just done it for yourself and your mates on the beach. What then inspired you to, hey, I want to start a movement, a community, and a business out of this?
There's only so much you want to do for yourself until it gets a bit played out. So, yeah, I mean, things always change and you can always dream a bit bigger, but I guess that for me, that was the dream was that simple at the point. Like at that point, I just wanted to do ice baths and I just wanted to meet some cool people so I could keep my headspace in the game and keep these habits going. And doing that for my friends was sweet, but then, yeah, more people wanted it. And so when it popped up in Geelong, like the way that it did, why stop really? I also had you there. Like I had Dan there. Like I had people in my ears who were like run with this, go do something bigger. So why not really? Like for me, I'm a big fan of just sort of, I'm opportunistic, and what I like to do is like really make the most of what's in front of me. And this was happening. People really liked it, and people were being impacted in a very positive way from it. So I felt this is the responsibility I asked for when I was lying in bed not able to get out of it and wanting to be able to make more of an impact. Here it is. You're going to go for it, or you're going to sit this one out and you're going to sleep through this too. That's really as simple as it was for me, man. Because, yeah, it would have been plenty simple just to keep it for my mates and everything, or just buy a cold tub for my house and then I'm sorted. Like that would have been the easy way out for sure. Would have been great. But nah, this is something else now. Like I don't know. It's really hard to describe.
Yeah.
I just think I am a big believer of like the more you can be responsible for things beyond you, the better it's going to forge you. So for me, this was more, it meant more responsibility, making more of an impact, more people, dealing with more councils and legislations and all my favorite type of stuff. Like more problems come with it, more issues come with it, but also you get to help more people and you get to meet more people and you really get to genuinely turn people's lives around. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's the part that I forget sometimes. Like, it's easy to forget and it's hard to experience if you haven't felt it. But like when people are constantly coming up to you and like, man, you actually changed my life for the better. Like, it's kind of hard to stop then. Yeah.
Yeah. What's been some of your favorite sort of things that you've seen come from this beautiful movement that you've created?
For me, I like when I see long-term changes in people. Like, it's very easy with ice baths and even with breath work to have, it's a big shocking experience. So it's very easy to jump in. No, it's very hard to jump in, but it's easy to do the jump in and come out and be like, oh my God, that was so good, felt so amazing. And then just kind of go back to the old ways after that. And that doesn't excite me at all. Like, You see it now if you're looking at around Instagram and TikToks and everything when it comes to breath work and things like there's so many videos of just people having big emotions and big everything like that, and that's beautiful. Like, it is really good, but it's good if it's actually making a change long term, I think. So for me, it's when somebody comes who I thought might never come again, because they're just that kind of person. They're a bit, whatever, they've got all these problems. Like, cool, they'll try it and tick it off their bucket list. But then a year later, they're coming and now their eyes are alive and they're looking healthier and they're actually switched on. It's like, okay, you're alive now. That's what I like to see. Because when you're alive and you're not worrying about all these fucking stories that have been holding you back this whole time, now you can actually live who you actually are. Like, you're back in touch with your own nature. I think the more we are in touch with our own nature within our own bodies and our own systems, we start to have a bit of an impact on the person beside us too. And they'll start to pick up on some of these subtleties and our heartbeats will start to align a little bit more. And then that'll happen to the next person. And soon we've actually made a change. We're all a little bit more stress-free and we're a little bit more empowered and we're able to just help the world. I find that really special.
One breath at a time.
One breath at a time. So there have been people that have had that experience, and yeah, like I won't give any, like I don't want to give specific names or anything like that, but that's ultimately the gist of it. Like, sometimes people come very addicted to something potentially, very stuck, very depressed, very don't know what to do, very stressed out all the time, very panicky, very one extreme to the other, and then after time coming back, lots of tears, lots of trying. It's like now they're relaxed and their nervous system's calm and they're just like, they're in control.
Yeah. And you see those benefits, like you said, like they not only stay within your life, but they start to leak in the best ways into other areas of your life. Like, there's plenty of examples where I've seen people come and, at the start getting the ice baths, screaming, carrying on, like very like emotional and chaos while in the ice. And then over time, we've seen them be able to settle into it and find their peace, find their stillness, even in that. Now they're almost testing it, going, okay, I want to go 8 minutes. I want to go 15 minutes. How much can I sit in this? And even for me, like even being able to find stillness within the chaos of the ice, right? Every time, I say this every week, I get to the ice and it's still cold, right? There's no switch in me that goes, this is hot. No, it's still cold, and every single time I still have to catch my breath. And then I lean into it. Like this time I was down to like my chin. That was I was like, I've never done this before. And that was scary because I was like, my throat's getting cold. But for me, each time, and I'm not trying to break any records, I don't stay in for more than, 4 minutes, 3-4 minutes. But for me, it's, each day you wake up, there's always going to be a challenge. There's always going to be things that are happening that we can't control. So if I can get into a situation where, in this situation, I am controlling something, I am choosing to do it, if I can still, amongst all these thoughts that come up, and I think a lot of people think that, for us, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but for me, they go, oh, you like love this stuff and like it's so easy for you. And it's like, no, like each time I have to go through that mind battle, but each time I find that stillness with it. And it's the same with the shower in the morning. Do you get that as well? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's part of the beauty and the lesson in all of this stuff, though. Like, I think people look at discomfort or fear as something that some people just kind of overcome it, and it's not a thing for them anymore. And that the reason those people never actually cross that frontier and conquer their fears is because they see it as an enemy that needs to be challenged. Where the way I see it is that it's not about that. It's about learning how to live amongst it and not let it rock you. And that's what the practice is. I've done 1,000 ice baths. I cold shower constantly. I'm wearing a t-shirt today and it's like flooding again. But it's the way I see it is very kind of just like what's going on in your brain. It will, the more you do things like this, it starts to change the circuitry in your brain. Initially, the circuitry says, this is fucked. This is going to be cold. I'm not doing this. This isn't for me. And once you can actually prove to that voice that you can do it, that voice starts to shut up a little bit. Doesn't mean it goes away completely or that it's not there or that it starts using other arguments. But the point is you have won that argument and you've jumped in and your body loves it when you do it. The only thing that's holding you back is this tiny little part at the front of your brain called your prefrontal cortex, the part that makes up all the stories about your life and about your situation. That's the only thing that's saying this is a bad idea. The moment you jump into the ice, your body is alive and it is loving it. And there are so many benefits from it and adaptations taking place when you're in there. So your body's on fire and it's like, yes, thank you. I'm so fucking happy you're doing this. But it's this little story up here, this tiny little fucking thing that we give all this credit to and that stops us from actually living life. Well, the practice is to be able to get used to turning that story off and doing what you got to be doing anyway. And the more you do it, that voice loses its power. Doesn't mean that there's no chaos in life. It doesn't mean that when the storm comes, it's not still going to be windy and thundery and lightning. But the difference is you learn how to embrace the stillness in the eye of the storm. And that's where the power is.
Yeah. Because if you don't, then any situation that comes up, you'll just go with the wind. You'll get taken with all that chaos, and that's where we see emotions going, maybe being shared in ways like, whether it's anger or those sorts of expressions, they come out in the worst ways. Mm-hmm. They're going to come out like they're okay to come out. We should be expressing these things, but if they come out in a situation where it's probably not the best moment for it to come out, or you'd rather choose in a different way, that's when it's like you're not controlling yourself. And that story again, the story, but also just getting control of yourself. And I feel like when I've been able to do that, and I'm definitely not saying I'm perfect in any way at doing that, but those times is where I start to then trust myself a little bit more each time. And I say, well, if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. I build that integrity, but also then can sit back. I think we all need a little bit more stillness in our life. Like, do I say everyone do an ice bath? Well, I say try it, right? Some sort of cold therapy would be beneficial to a lot of people. But can you come back to your breath? Can you practice a conscious breath and not just go throughout your day being like, did I breathe today? Yeah, I did. And then like actually looking back, and probably we never do, but then noticing, fuck, I was holding my breath for most of that day.
It's the subtleties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's that simple tip or advice of the breath that can be so powerful for people to understand?
Hmm. I think if you want to put it really, really simple, the key is awareness. Because all of us are breathing, and we've been breathing since day one. The very first thing we did was take a sip of air, and here we are. And the last thing we're going to do is exhale, and that's it, game over. In between, we're going to be breathing a lot. Most of us are going to be breathing about 20,000 times a day. Most of us really should be breathing about 14,000 times a day. But we're not paying attention to it. And the reason we know this is because 90% of the population are overbreathers. Overbreathers.
Yeah.
90% of people are overbreathing and breathing too much, which this isn't simple anymore, but 90% of people are overbreathing, and overbreathing causes so many problems that you might not even realize are connected to breathing. So we can get into that a little bit later too, but ultimately just becoming aware of it is enough, because you do notice, like you said, have I stopped breathing? Am I breathing too much here? Am I breathing through my nose or my mouth? Am I yawning a lot? Am I sighing too much? Am I breathing into my chest? Am I fast? Am I slow? Like, all of these little nuances actually matter. They matter because your breath is connected to your heart. Your breath is the key to your nervous system. Your nervous system is dealing with the stress in and outside of your life. So that if there is a storm, and that storm decides that it's a stressful situation and it decides to stress your body out, well, you can roll with that. You will. The outside will affect the inside, and now your body's going to be stressed, and it's going to be sending all of its resources to deal with the stress. Every system in our body is going to be equipped so that we can handle the hurricane right now, and that's usually when we get stressed out. But the beauty about that is that we can also change the way that our system's working. We can change our internal environment to affect our external environment. Our breath reflects our state and our physiology, but our physiology affects our breath. It goes both ways. So if we're in fight or flight, have you ever heard of that? When there's a storm, you fight, you flee. Which one's the best one to do? Either way, it's a survival situation. But if we're in a survival situation and we don't want to be, all we need to do is change our breath, and that will bring us down into a parasympathetic nervous system, which is a bit more relaxed and a bit more chilled and a bit more, okay, there's a storm there, but it's heading that way. It's not coming anywhere near me. Why the fuck am I freaking out right now?
Mm-hmm.
Our breath can do that, because our breath is, and it's something that can influence our autonomic nervous system. And again, I'm kind of like making it a little bit more technical than you asked for, but autonomic nervous system is responsible for, it's all the automatic functions in our body. So it affects our heartbeat, like all of the things that we don't think about but happen. It's stuff that we don't have control over because it just happens without our conscious thought. What happened was when they studied Wim Hof, for the first time ever, science realized that actually through breathing, you can control these functions. And so through breathing, we can begin to control our respiration, we can control our heartbeat. Our breath and our heart are so intricately linked. It is ridiculous, like how you breathe affects your heartbeat, and the way that your heart beats affects your brain. And when your brain is reacting to your heart, it starts to send signals through the rest of your systems that are going to affect the way you're being. All of it affects each other. The breath is very important, Carlo, but it just starts with awareness. Mm-hmm. Just notice how you're breathing right now.
Yeah.
And awareness and a bit of knowledge too. Like I think awareness is also a bit of a fluffy term, because we all talk about breath work these days and just like, just breathe. But like not knowing that 90% of people are over breathing, there's a lot of very simple things that we don't know about breathing. And they are very simple things, but it's just a matter of getting that knowledge out there right now. Because if you know what is a normal breath, what is a healthy way to be breathing, what does that look like? If you know what that looks like, and you know what a dysfunctional breath looks like and how that can affect you, you're going to start breathing a little bit better, and you're going to be able to not only control or have more of an influence over the situations in your life that are affecting you, but you're going to build resilience to them.
Yeah. And especially those moments where we hold our breath, like maybe in a stressful situation, anxious situation, or even when when we start to feel anxious and people start breathing really quickly, like you said, the awareness is just knowing, okay, this is happening. Well, awareness in life, really, but this is happening and this is how I'm breathing. Can I switch to a longer, slower breath to then calm this down and calm the heart rate down as well at the same time?
Yeah.
With that breath. And I feel like you said, like it just hasn't been taught. Like we've
Well,
never
it
been
takes
taught
knowledge. It takes knowledge. No, but most people won't realize when they're stressed out that they're breathing, that they're hyperventilating.
Yeah.
Like you got to know that nice long inhale is actually going to bring that down, because a long exhale is connected to your parasympathetic nervous system, and there is a lot of intricacies that go in place that are going to calm you down and bring you down. Yeah. So yeah, without knowing that, it's not that simple. If you pay attention, maybe you'll figure it out. If you just sit with it and just notice how you're breathing, like maybe you'll figure it out. But that's part of what's got me really excited these days as well, because I have been leaning more into that side of breath work and a bit more about how breath affects the body and how breathing in everyday life can have such an influence on whatever it is you're doing in life. Like if you want to do a podcast a little bit better, if you want to go run a marathon a bit better, if you want to be a better lover, like anything you want to be doing, you're going to be breathing. And if you're over breathing, you're having problems. Like your body's not working and your mind's not working. And if 90% of people are over breathing, then we've got a lot of problems out here. And now I know, like, we've all got a lot of shit to be working on. Like, I mean, we're all looking after our health, we're all looking after our relationships, our finances, and there's all these different modalities to try out, and self-help and everything. Like, there's a lot we got to be doing. And I'm not here to say that the breath is like a be all and end all, or that it's the silver bullet that's going to fix everything, but it is going to load the gun, because all of these finances and these relationships and these self-help seminars and everything that you're going to go doing, you will be breathing throughout them. So if you can learn how to restore your natural flow of breathing, it's going to have an impact on everything, and you're going to be able to optimize everything. So it's a really good foundation to get right. The beauty of it is that your body has a natural way that it wants to be breathing. And so when we put in some of these practices in place, initially it is work. Like, we consciously have to put our awareness into retraining our breathing patterns so that we can go back to natural, but our body yearns for natural. And once we restore that flow, it likes to stay there. It does like to keep it there. So when you get there, you don't lose it. You're naturally going to be doing it. It's going to slip into your subconscious. And now when you get panicked, you're naturally going to start breathing the way that you ought to be breathing, or any other situation. If you want to be a bit more pumped up, if you've got a test or an exam coming up and you want a bit more, we can breathe your way to help you through that. So yeah, it's a really good foundation to rebuild. Really, really important.
What's been interesting in that, and what you've taught me over the past few months, is just certain times where you can use different breath techniques and different times where they're applicable. And as you were saying before, like, I think people think of breath work and they think of these huge experiences where it's like a big trauma release, and it's like, well, we can't be doing that on a daily basis. That's probably not good for your system. And in different settings, like, you don't want to be like, you're going to be breathing like that when you're driving your car. No, that's going to
cause an accident.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot of problems that can come from that. In what instances do you see like those being the right places and the right times for those different styles? What are different styles of breath as well? And when are the right times and places for those?
Yeah, for sure. Breathwork is a very, very broad term, and it covers so many different things. And there's a lot of people who have a lot of different opinions about it as well. How I like to kind of look at it is, I like to look at a spectrum of what it actually is and how it looks like. Now, most people know breathwork as it originates from pranayama, which is yogic practices. And that is definitely like breathwork has been around for thousands of years, and yogis and pranayama have definitely had a deep, thorough understanding of how it works. So have many cultures. So has Tibetan Buddhism. So have the martial arts. Like, breathwork has been a practice in so many different cultures and modalities for so long. Where we've really started understanding a lot more about breathwork really started in the 60s. And in the 60s, there's two ends of the spectrum that I like to look at. What most people understand as breathwork these days, what we're talking about, it is when you're in a room and you're like breathing quite heavily, quite deeply, and it can be for a long time, and it can be very emotional and lots of experiences, lots of crying, lots of emotional release. I think that's what probably most people listening to this are used to. That's one end of the spectrum here, and that kind of stuff really came to, I guess I related a bit more to holotropic breathing, and that was in the 60s. A man named Stanislav Grof came up with it, and he used to do research for LSD therapies, but at some point LSD became illegal and they couldn't do it anymore, and like he was getting really good results with it, but he basically, when it became illegal, he started looking for alternative therapies that could bring you into a point of alternate consciousness. So consciousness that isn't everyday kind of reality consciousness. And he found that through this breathing, like this heavy breathing for a long time at a time with certain music and like all these things, that was putting people into a similar kind of state. And it was really helping them move through some of this bullshit, because by being in this alternate state, they were able to release some of the traumas and things that they were holding on to. And it was very, very therapeutic. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of one end of the spectrum. Now, there are so many different other styles and different ways that it came from. So like some breath workers will be listening to me like, oh, that's not like, there's more to it than that, but he is definitely a big influential on that kind of it. Similar timing on the other side of the spectrum, you have a man called Konstantin Buteyko. He was born in Kiev and he studied in Russia and did a lot of things there. Now, he suffered from hypertension and he was basically a very sick dude. He had lots of things going on and lots of health problems, and he was looking in the mirror one day and looking like a ghost, and basically was paying attention and thought, and just said to himself, I wonder if the way I'm breathing has anything to do with it. So he started breathing more and more and more, and what he discovered was that by breathing more, he got sicker. So then he thought, what if I breathe less? And he started breathing less, and he got better. Then he started going to hospitals and working particularly with asthma patients on this style that's now called Buteyko breathing, which ultimately is about restoring your balance, breathing less and getting into a normal rhythm, very scientific type based. And he discovered that it was working really well. He was working with hospital patients, with all these patients, and he was having 100% success rates. Like for hundreds of different symptoms and conditions were being managed and reversed to an extent through this breathing that he was doing. Now, this dude was hated at the time. Like, he had death threats on him. He had people run into him with cars. He tried to get poisoned. Like, all these different things. People hated him. But his breath work was so successful and was working so good that it's kind of evolved a bit. So when we're talking breath work, one side of the spectrum is we've got the very sciencey kind of Buteyko based everything. The other side of the spectrum is the very like based off LSD and like a bit more spiritual enlightenment kind of thing. There's those two sides of the spectrum. In between, we have everything else. So we've got like Wim Hof, who kind of made things a bit more accessible to everyday people. Science started chasing him a lot as well because like he was very renowned and they made some huge discoveries with him. So he's an absolute pioneer. We've got Patrick McEwen from Oxygen Advantage, who kind of took Buteyko's work and made it a little bit more. He repackaged it and made it a bit more for everyday people and for athletes and gym goers and things like that. So he's kind of made it a little bit more popular. And where we're really at right now is a point where we're starting to find the middle ground, which is a little bit of everything. So like my favorite is Breathless. I think they're doing it incredibly. Johannes, like I've learned so much from him recently, but he's like really got a method where it's like, here's the whole spectrum, here's what breathwork can do, and we got the choice to utilize these different techniques when we need it. So like, yeah, like some people are dead set on the science stuff, like it's very technical, it's very this and everything doesn't matter. But then on the other side, it's like, man, that science mumbo jumbo bullshit isn't working. People are still fucking like not feeling right. We need to just work something else out and give them these higher experiences, explore your consciousness a bit more, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I guess that kind of gives a little bit of a idea as to what like how I'm kind of like looking at breathwork and how I think we're starting to a lot more these days. There is some stuff that's full science and some stuff that science will never explain, and where you want to go about that, it really depends on your journey and where you're at, but there is a place for all of it. I think it's really important to start on this side of things with the retrain your breath. And the reason being is that 90% of people aren't breathing right. Like, man, some simple changes, we can start breathing right, and we're going to start to experience improvements in all areas of life from doing that. Now, if you are breathing a healthier breath in general, like if your system's working, like I said before, no matter what you're doing in life, if you restore your breathing and if you start with that as a foundation, you're going to be doing that thing at a higher level than you would have been previously. And this goes for breath work too. If you want to be doing the holotropic, the rebirthing, the very like big explore your consciousness kind of styles of breathing, it's going to be better if you have a normal functional breath on an everyday basis anyway. You're going to get more out of it. And also, I think if you're going to be breathing a bit more functionally, or let's say if you're going to be breathing functionally and you're not currently, you're going to find that a lot of the things that you want to heal from in the first place won't even be there. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I love it. And it gives like such a full spectrum of like where people can start and what they probably see on Instagram, and they go, oh, is that just breath work? Or is this just breath work? And it's like, no, there's so many different, like yoga, like there's so many different styles of it, so many different applications for it, where I think it can get confusing and people can quite see different things and be like, oh my God, is that like someone's crying and screaming during breath work? I'm never going to do that. But it's like, well, on the most simplest form is learning how to breathe better. More optimally for you, so that you can start to, and I relate this back to your story, and we've had conversations about this where you've said like, if we just got enough sleep, breathed better, and got good nutrition as you were doing for yourself in that time during lockdown and stuff, you will start to feel better. Like, it won't necessarily change the situations that are happening, but you will feel better. Therefore, you can show up better.
I think it will start changing the situations around you, because like that, you are going to show up better. The things that bother you, when you're on a lower level and you start making a big deal about them, they're not going to bother you, and you're not going to make a big deal about them. People whose opinions don't really matter to you, you're not going to vibe with those people. You're going to do the shit that you care about right now. Like, it's going to change your world very significantly if you just get yourself up to a decent starting position. Like, we got to realize, like, I mean, a lot of people are very unhealthy. When you look at the health stats, like, we do live in a time where we're living longer than ever, but we're also, like, a lot of people are also living sicker longer than ever too. And what's normal is always changing. When we're looking, like, I'm not an expert in this stuff, but like, I mean, when we're looking at what averages are in terms of certain blood markers or certain factors, we're always basing it around what the average is. And over time, this average is getting worse and worse and worse. Like, for example, like we breathe in a certain amount of air every minute. It's called a minute volume. And it used to be quite normal for us to be breathing in about 6 liters a minute. Now we're breathing in about 12 liters a minute.
That's that over-breathing.
That's over-breathing. Yeah. That's part of it anyway. But it's like, that's a number that's changed. So now if you ask anybody, like, what's the average breathing rate per minute? It's like, oh, people are breathing about 12 breaths per minute. Like, and really, that's too much. Like, you want to be breathing like 8, 10, maybe 12. But people breathing 12 to 14 plus per minute, problems. But it is the average and it is normal. So is normal really a good target to be going for? I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah, I really don't think so. But it's the way everything affects everything else too. Like I said, your breath's going to affect your heart rate, and it's going to affect your brain. It's going to affect everything else in your body, and that's going to affect everybody else around you. If we can bring it back down to what's not normal, but what's actually healthy, everything starts to change from there. So it's hard, because that is a little bit more of the work too. Like, when we talk about the work, this is the work because this requires discipline. Like, a lot of people like to feel, and like, that's why I think the big emotional release type stuff is very important, because it's like, I just want to cry, I just want to feel, and I think it's great for that. Like, I think there is a very important place, and we need to be doing that as well. But the reality is, some things do just take discipline, and some things you just got to spend a bit of time in and just fix it up. It's not that sexy, but it's very, very important. When we get there, I can only speak from my experience, man, but it's just, you just experience life in a whole different way. those negative thoughts don't bother you. You start thinking a lot more positively. You don't crave bullshit anymore. You're open to opportunities. Like, things work. Things just work.
Yeah. And like you said, coming back to the human nature, like when we think about it and can conceptualize it, we want to be in our most natural form, like you were saying. And that's returning to that human nature. Breathing well, sleeping well, eating well. Like those things that just help us then naturally thrive. And I think for so long we've been either given things that make us not thrive, or we've been taught ways that, whether the people didn't have the education on it, that have allowed us to get to these points where we do feel that, these barriers around us. And now we can start reducing those barriers when we start coming back to the simple things, like our breath and like all those things. So I'm intrigued to what's got you inspired about the next year and all the things that you've got coming up.
I think next year I'm really going to be just taking everything to the next level. I'm going to be taking things deeper. There's going to be more opportunities to dive into some of the specific situations at a much bigger length. This year, we've obviously been doing Cold and Conscious, and that's been going on as it has been. I've also my year, the side of the year that people haven't seen, has been dealing with a lot of paperwork and a lot of admin stuff, and dealing with councils and health departments and just really annoying shit, to be honest, man. And I think this year, for all types of reasons, but I've been quite caught up in a lot of different areas that haven't really been where I've been wanting to be going necessarily. So now I'm going back to that. And what that looks like exactly, I won't know it till it happens.
Yeah.
But essentially, I'm kind of starting with me again. Like I'm at a better baseline in my health than I used to be in these stories that I started with. But at the same time, I wasn't improving or getting anywhere better this year. I was very plateaued and very kind of not the best at everything. Recently, I've been getting back into it. A lot more time in nature again, a lot more cold, a lot more breathing. Not always the fun breathing either. But all of these things, I've definitely been getting back into it. And I found recently, when I can just get past that storytelling part of my brain and just actually get into my body and actually experience life, then the lived experience is the only one that really matters. And that's where I've been. So I'm just I'm living it, I'm experiencing it, and I'm feeling good in myself right now. What I hope to be doing is be bringing more workshops and more events that can take us into these details, particularly obviously around breath work and cold therapy. I'm going to be running my first workshop, First Breath, this Sunday, which is specifically about educating, building awareness, and even giving the protocols and tools so that we can start to retrain our breathing and get it a bit better. So for people who are ready and interested, I want options like that. I've got another event planned soon that is going to be a bit more of the other side of the spectrum and a little bit more deep breathing. Just a lot more things like that are coming. Potentially a retreat or two down the track as well. Who knows? But yeah, I want people to be able to experience what I'm talking about on a deeper level. And it's good. There's so many different entry points and so many different ways people can evolve and get there. But I just want people to feel it, and so I want to be able to create the space and opportunities to give you those experiences.
So it means if you're listening or watching, there's plenty of opportunities, especially around Melbourne, to plug into all these things and experience it and learn. We don't know what we don't know. So, and if you're listening to this, you've obviously heard, Steve's story, you've been able to connect with it. And if you do, and if you resonate, then sweet. Cold and Conscious, great place to start. Very accessible on the beach every weekend. But, these other events that you're doing every now and again, they're great to actually learn. That's the tangible stuff, the knowledge stuff as well that goes deep into it.
It's going to be very in-depth. I guess Cold and Conscious, ultimately, the point is just bringing the community together and connecting. We do all these things, and consistency is going to get results. Consistency is going to build your resilience, and it's going to help your health in all these ways we've talked about and other ways we haven't talked about. But there is a point where you're going to need to take things deeper as well. There's the journey continues. You get more by working on it, you get to a place of calmness, and like you're in this state where your homeostasis, we call it, like your resting health line starts to get a little bit higher, and you start to become a bit more resilient. So it's not only just about being in the stillness of the hurricane, but it's about saying I can touch the hurricane a bit, but not be affected by it because I can handle it. So we do get better at this, and it's always going to be uncomfortable. And every level that discomfort and that fear is going to change. It's going to be very different, but we want to keep going. Like, I'm personally keeping going. I know you're keeping going. I don't think keeping going is actually proper English, but I'm keeping going. So, yeah, like now it is like, all right, if you're ready to take it to the next level, like, let's go. I'm ready to bring you along too. Yeah. And this stuff is accessible. So many people are starting to do these kinds of things. So even if it's cold and conscious, we're just sticking to Victoria for the moment. These workshops I'll probably take around a little bit. Maybe we'll do them online one day, but for now I like to keep the experience in person because things do change when you're in person and when you're around people doing this kind of stuff. So there are ways to get involved and to experience this for yourself one way or another, whether it's through cold and conscious or not.
Yeah, love that. And who inspires you most?
Do you want a person, like an actual person, or? Tough question, actually. Man, these days I'm inspired by God more than anything, to be perfectly honest. That's where it's come to. I was very atheist and very everything, but I think that's all starting to flip around a little bit now. Whether it's real or not, like that believing in something more important than myself is ultimately where I'm going to when I say that. Very triggering word, but that's what I really mean. Like, I know that there's so much more to life than my limited perception of what I understand of it, and that's really what's got me inspired these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't got a single person because lately I've been feeling better than ever, and it's been getting out and actually living what I'm talking to you guys about. That's what's been inspiring me. So I'm inspiring myself.
Yeah. I love that. And where can everyone connect with you and find all these good things that you have to share coming up?
You can connect with me on Instagram is probably the best place. Just join Cold and Conscious and send me a message, or you can even jump on my personal one, Stivka_. Yeah.
STIVKA_.
That's the one. Yep. Both different vibes, but both me at the moment anyway. But Cold and Conscious, that might change soon anyway. So yeah, either way, jump on them, have a look, see what vibes with you, see where you're at, send us a message. We've got these workshops, we've got these events coming up. We've got Cold and Conscious regular on the weekends. I'm going to be talking with you soon as well, aren't I?
Yeah.
Again.
Well,
in a few days. Oh, this won't be out yet.
When you've heard this, you would have missed out. So it was a great event.
My bad.
We're talking in past tense.
How
now.
good was it?
It was amazing. It was incredible. You missed out. Whenever you see a live show going to be up, make sure you get your ticket and join us because we had a lot of fun times this year. We had 2 other live shows, and I think it's just all these different experiences that we get to share. We get along so well, so we're always coming together and sharing more with everyone because we want everyone to know these things too. We've been blessed to go through the journey that we've been on and learn the things, and now we want to teach and share that. And I think that's what also inspires me so much about you, and like, you know, we've shared deeply on like what we've had to go through challenging wise this year in our personal lives, and being able to keep going, like you said before, I don't know if it's proper English, but to keep pursuing, keep moving forward regardless of those things, or not even regardless of those things, but even though those things are happening, that's what's been super inspiring for you to take it from an idea, from a concept for yourself to then impact so many people, including myself, has been an incredible thing to witness and to be a part of. So I just want to say a big thank you to you, my man. Thanks, for everything that you do and everything that you are and the example that you lead and share. And I know you're very humble in the way of, you know, you don't really go out there and boast about the things that you, you know, those sorts of things, but you have changed a lot of lives and you have started the ripple effect for a lot of people. So appreciate you so much. Appreciate everything you shared on the conversation today, but also everything that you do and will be sharing, because it is something that I advise everyone to, if you do resonate, please get in touch, and please, especially this conversation right now, if anything has stood out to you, maybe you can relate to how Steve was feeling back in, the lockdowns, or maybe even getting to the point where you're getting to 30 years old or 40 years old, or that generational next step, and you're like, what am I doing with my life? What have I got to show with it? Which I know I'm getting to that point and I'm kind of like feeling it. But if you've had anything in this that maybe even has triggered something within you, or you've learnt something, screenshot, share it on your Instagram, Stivka_, or the Live Feel Be Inspired podcast, Carlo_Cirillo as well, and would love to hear from you. And again, just reach out. I think if you're in any of those states and you don't know what to do, you don't have the knowledge yourself, you don't have the awareness, there are people that you can reach out, like Stivka, like myself, where you can ask a question, or we can lead you in the right direction or point you to the right person. I think just sitting there and not doing anything, there is options now. You don't have to just sit there. So again, hopefully you got so much inspiration out of this conversation. I know I did. There's certainly so many points. I'm going to clip that up for Instagram. I love it. I love the simple teaching of just breathing and being aware of your breath, but also your story amongst all of that is super inspiring. So thank you so much, brother.
Thanks, bro.
That was incredible.
Pleasure. Hell yeah.
Can't wait for the next one as well. And thank you so much for listening. Tune in. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, all the fun things you know how to do on all the different channels. But thank you so much for taking your time to listen in. Take care, everyone, and be inspired.
Peace.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode on the podcast. So grateful you took the time to tune in. I'm sure there were many, many points of inspiration in that whole episode. So if anything stood out to you, I suggest you write it down, write it in the notes section on your phone, write it on a piece of paper, and then use that inspiration to start taking action in the direction that you want to go. Make sure you connect on all the social media platforms, Live Feel Be Inspired with dots in between the words on Instagram, and go check out myself, Carlo_Cirillo, and also in the show notes below there will be everything you need, all the details and links to connect with the guest, and also myself, and all the good things coming up in the world of inspiration and the Inspired Collective. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, be inspired.